You can have a seat. If you're here and you have not gotten to know us very well yet, we would love to get to know you better. In the seat in front of you are these cards that say welcome home on it. I would love, if you're new here or you've just been here for a short amount of time and haven't introduced yourself to us yet, would you fill out this card? This is our best way of getting to know you, and we want to know you. We want to connect with you. So if you would fill that out and put it in the bucket after the sermon, I'll come back up here and we'll have an opportunity to give our gifts or our tithes so you can give it at that time. So we'd love to have you do that. I wanted to mention something to you. We do a lot of things around here where we serve our community. And many of you are aware of the many needs in the town of Coatesville. And one of the things we do in July of every year is our students go down to Coatesville to a camp called Camp of the Old Mill. And they bring in students from Coatesville and do a camp with them for a week. And our kids raise money and pay their own way to go to this so that the kids in Coatesville can go for free. And they put on the whole camp for it. Our kids are the counselors, and they head up the canoe section, and they do all this kind of stuff, and they make sure the gospel gets these kids in Coatesville, and it's an amazing week. Here's what I wanted to throw out to you. I need a bunch of kitchen staff. And I thought I would mention that to you today. It's going to be on July 16, 17, and 18. It's a Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. So I think that's 2 weeks from now. And we just need people who help in the kitchen. You can help for one meal or all of the meals. You can come do all sorts of cooking. Like if you're a major chef, come on in and do your chefly thing. If you're just a good helper or a dishwasher, we'd love to have you. If this sounds miserable, don't sign up for it. Serving Jesus should be just boatloads of fun. So when you hear of something that is a lot of fun, like in fact, I saw that the worship team has a table set up out there today. If you want to, if you're good, go see them. Or if you want to work in the sound booth or whatever, go see them. Do stuff that blesses you, because if it blesses you, it'll probably bless us, and we'll probably enjoy it. But anyhow, Camp of the Old Mill, July 16 to 18. Grab one of these cards. If you're interested in helping out in the kitchen on those 3 days, that would be huge. That'll help us. We've just had so many kids from Coatesville sign up. We need more food. So we need more people in the kitchen to make that happen. So love for you to do that. Also, this Wednesday, as you know, is 4th of July. Saturday, we're having something called CF Family Days, and it's going to be in our front parking lot. All sorts of food and events and music and activities going on out there in the parking lot. It's going to be a lot of fun. We just think it's cool to create activities and stuff for you to just bring your whole family, that we can be together as a church and hang out. At the end of the evening, it starts at 4. This coming Saturday, it starts at 4. At the end of the evening, around 10, we're having fireworks. Now, if you're wondering where your tithe money is going, if it's going to those fireworks, we're cheap. We're leveraging the fact that the township is putting off fireworks over our parking lot. So church, we're putting on fireworks on Saturday. Come on out here and hang out with us. And you can park out back, and there'll be a lot of people there. There's that big Yukon Days across the street and all this kind of stuff. Just come make a day of it and have a lot of fun together. We would love for you to be here for that. Also, today starts our special speaker series. Next week, Jason Jimenez will be here. And I know I don't say that right. He'll get that all dialed in next week and get that correct. And so he's going to be continuing our series, If God, Why Evil? So I want to introduce our speaker for today to you. When we began to think about this series, If God, Why Evil? We began to brainstorm all the different things that you may want to talk about when it comes to that subject matter. And one of the things that came up was, well, what about the evil in the criminal justice system and all the stuff and the things we see in the news every day that gets all sorts of people riled up. And when I thought about that, I'm like, oh no, that's the last thing I want to talk about. That's going to set people on fire. And I realized, no, this is an issue that we need to talk about. It's an issue we need to have a conversation about. So then it's like, I'm not doing that. So what you do when you don't want to do something, you bring in someone else to do that. And so we sought out to find a speaker that would be excellent to do that. Many of you know that I'm on the board of trustees at Lancaster Bible College, and the head of their criminal justice department is a man by the name of Dr. John Churchville. He's here with us this morning, and I'm excited about him. He's an attorney. He's led at Franklin and Marshall. He's now leading at Lancaster Bible College. And he has a unique take on this that I believe is just going to be incredibly helpful to all of us. I was thinking about his coming, and the other night we had a swing dance out here in the cafe. They're having that every third Friday of the month. So if you're into that kind of thing, third Friday of the month out there. And I met this young couple, and they said they went to Lancaster Bible College. I said, oh, wow, you got to come back on Sunday. We have a speaker that's one of the professors at Lancaster Bible College coming. And he goes, who? And I said, Dr. John Churchville. He goes, ugh. I'm like, oh, gee. I didn't need that. and he goes, no. He goes, he's hard. He goes, he and this one other guy, and you have to take one of them. And he says, it's pick your poison. I'm like, oh, my goodness. He goes, you're having him in? I said, yeah. We're not going to have a test at the end or anything like that. Would you welcome Dr. John Churchville to the front here this morning? By the way, first service, he said, I'll just be 20 minutes. He comes up to me afterwards, all apologetic. I'm sorry. I said, hey, next hour, it doesn't matter. You can go 1, 2 o'clock. God bless you as you share, brother.
I guess that's his subtle way of saying, don't keep us too long. I said this in the first service, I'll just say this now. There's always a psychological, physical reaction people get when they hear attorney or lawyer. The body kind of tenses up a little bit. I've actually been places where people have come to me and said, is it really possible to be a lawyer and a Christian? Okay, so yes, you can. I will not tell the same lawyer jokes I told the first service, but I always like to know my audience, so how about this one? How can you tell when a lawyer is lying? Oh, you guys know that one. Yeah, earlier I did, what do you call 100 lawyers at the bottom of the ocean? It was like unison, a good start. Yeah, everybody knew that one. Okay, I'll try one more. This was my son's favorite. What's the difference between a herd of buffalo and a lawyer? Okay, all right. The lawyer charges more. Okay, now I got to do one more, just one more. I know these are terrible. Once I was doing a jury trial for a pretty serious case, and I opened up with lawyer jokes, and the jury was just like, can we please just get to the... And probably some of you were feeling that. Just get it. If you're going to talk, just talk, but just one more. Okay. Why won't sharks attack lawyers? Oh, you heard that one before. Professional courtesy. Okay. Well, I'm a lawyer and a professor, not a theologian, so I can't really tell you why. Please come hear Jason Jimenez next week. He's more of the theological expert who can tell you the why. As an attorney, as a professor, as a father, as a Christian, as a human being, as someone who grew up in Philadelphia. Anybody else here from Philadelphia? Wow. Okay. It's good to know your audience. I can't tell you why, but I can tell you maybe a little bit about where I've seen evil in the criminal justice system. I can tell you maybe a little bit about where it comes from. And I can tell you maybe where I've seen God or maybe where we can see God in some of these. I'm going to do this through a story in the Bible about a man named Joseph. This is in Genesis 37, 39, and 40. Joseph was one of 12 sons of a man named Jacob. Jacob had 10 others first, and then Joseph comes along at number 11, and then he has a baby boy, Benjamin. And we're going to open the story, and we're going to talk about Joseph and his family dynamics. So I'll just start with saying three main places where I've seen evil is in the criminal justice system is from shattered families. So we're going to talk a little bit about Joseph's family and maybe make some applications to our own lives. I've seen it in systems of forgetfulness. We'll talk a little bit about systems, and seen it finally in our own selves, ourselves that are full of desire. So if we can go to if we can go to the next slide about Joseph. I've told you there's a man named Jacob, 12 sons. Joseph was 17. He was pasturing the flock with his brothers. He was a boy with the sons of Bilhah and Zilpah, his father's wives. Joseph brought a bad report of them to their father. Joseph goes home and tells a bad story about his other brothers. Now, Israel loved Joseph more than any other of his sons because he was the son of his old age. He made him a robe of many colors, but when his brothers saw that their father loved him more than all his brothers, they hated him and couldn't speak peacefully to him. bad report, loved one more, robe of many colors. Other family notices, hey, this guy's your favorite. Hated him and couldn't speak peacefully to him. The narrator is telling us, we're in for a doozy here. Joseph, we're going to talk a little bit more. Joseph ends up in the criminal justice system. Joseph tells some dreams to his brothers. His brothers ultimately get so angry that they say, let's kill him. His brothers throw him in a pit. His brothers sell him into slavery, and that's how Joseph ends up in Egypt. Joseph goes into an employer's house. The employer says, Joseph, I think you're great. I'm going to trust you with everything. Joseph ends up getting falsely accused by his employer's wife of rape, basically. Joseph goes to jail. How did Joseph end up in the criminal justice system? Shattered family. Now, I'm going to give you a little side note about Joseph, because everybody hates tattletales, right? Nobody likes them. Even little kids. My youngest son, his name is Canaan. When he was 4, he's in the little daycare, and Canaan's like the good boy, and he'd come up, and I'd see him, and he'd go, that kid took an extra cracker at snack time. Okay, thanks, buddy. Or he'd maybe go to the teacher and be like, he wasn't sleeping during nap time. And the teacher was always polite, and inside I'm like, nobody likes a tattletale, don't do that. Well, that's what Joseph did. His 10 older brothers, hey, Dad, guess what they did? So I'm going to use the words emotional intelligence, picking up social cues. Clearly, Joseph had none. After he tattles, he's walking around his little fancy coat that nobody else has. It's clear he's the favorite. Look at that. They hated him and couldn't speak peacefully. Anybody here have boys? Boys? Boys are not subtle. If they hate you, you know. It's not like, I wonder how my brother's feeling about me today. I always know how my boys are getting along. I have an almost 6 and an almost 11. We can hear them from the 3rd floor. Ow, get off my ear. Ow, stop pulling my hair. Or, as what happened last night at 10:30, as my wife and I are like, oh, we're going to get some good sleep for tomorrow. The little one comes bursting through the door crying, Isaac was sitting on my head, or whatever he was doing. Look, you know when you're having conflict in your family. Joseph's emotional intelligence was very low. And how do I know that? Because the very next verse after this, in verse 5, it says, Joseph had a dream, and who did he go tell? He went and told his brothers. Joseph, what planet are you from? He actually said, look, guys, I had this dream, and there was all this corn, and mine was bigger than yours, and yours all bowed down to mine. You can imagine his brothers, and the Bible says, so his brothers hated him even more. You would think Joseph had gotten the hint. It goes on, like the next verse, it says Joseph had another dream. And every time I read this verse, I cringe. I'm like, Joseph, please, go get a clue. Stop. Joseph goes, it says he got his brothers, and this time he gets his dad. Hey, guys, I had this other dream, and there were like 12 cows, or I don't even remember. I'm getting my stories mixed up. He had another dream, and again, his was bigger than theirs. That's the bottom line. And the Bible says they hated him, they were jealous. Every time I read that story, I cringe, and honestly, I see a little bit of myself. Confession. I'm not really good at emotional intelligence. I married a wonderful woman who scores very high on that chart, and she's been working with me. Before I got married, I remember, this is a true story. I was trying to help a young man become a Christian, and he was in my house with my roommate. I was studying, and we were like, and Jesus did this, and Jesus did that. And I remember leaning across the table to make my point, and he kept doing this. And I was like, oh, the Holy Spirit's convicting him. Jesus is really getting into his heart. And, he did not make a decision for Jesus that day. And he left. And my roommate said to me afterwards, did you notice that he feels intimidated by you? I was like, what? I'm like the nicest guy in the world. And he goes, why do you think he was crossing his arms and moving backwards? He goes, that's body language. I was like, what? This guy's crazy. He doesn't know anything. Then I went and got married. Shortly after our wedding, my wife was a school teacher at the time, and in our new apartment complex, I was like, hey, I want to go be friendly to our neighbor. And our neighbor was a woman who was a school teacher, and she was at the mailbox getting her mail. I'm embarrassed I say this really happened. I got out the car we were in. I walked over, hey, how you doing? The woman took her mail. Hi, how are you? Like, and I kept going, come here, how are you? We go home, and my wife was always very kind. She said, hey, I'm a school teacher. I know what it's like when you've been out with kids all day for 8 or 9 hours and you're commuting, and the kids are jumping around, they're screaming. When we come home, we just want to just relax. She goes, we actually don't want to have conversations. And thanks for being friendly, but she said, did you notice that she was backing up? And I was like, huh. And she said, when people do that, it means they actually want to leave the conversation. I have to tell you one more. Is it okay? Can I tell you one more? After several years of marriage, I said, now I got this emotional intelligence thing down now. My wife's family is from Sri Lanka. It's a little country like a teardrop right underneath India. Different culture there than America. So we had a Sri Lankan couple over, and this was a young woman who was from a small, rural village where people kept to the old traditions. And after dinner, again, being me, I said, thanks so much, this is great. Come give us a hug. You would think that I would get this, kind of like Joseph. The woman didn't back up, but she did do like this. And I was like, oh, she's just shy. I got to loosen her up. Come on! And I grabbed her, and I did like this, and I remember thinking, why is she resisting? Why is she resisting? Meanwhile, my wife was in the back like this. The husband's cracking up, and I was like, what? And the husband said, in our culture, women don't touch any man but their husband. It's like that commercial, want to get away? That was me. My wife was very kind. On the drive home, she kind of knew I got it. So even if people don't back up and walk away, or if they're not hugging back, is that mean? And she was like, yeah. And she goes, from here on, just don't hug anybody. She didn't really say that. I relate to Joseph. I'm not saying what his brothers did was good, but he's got to get a clue. He had no emotional intelligence at all for him to keep going back to his brothers. Where am I going with this? Why did Joseph end up in the criminal justice system? Shattered family. There was something wrong with those family dynamics, and so often, wherever you are in the criminal justice system, whether you're a police officer, whether you're a judge, a probation officer, a social worker, an attorney, a family member, very often you see people are there because of some messed up family dynamics. I took one of my classes down to the Lancaster County Courthouse a couple months ago, and one of the cases, there was a guy who was about this big, and he had never been in trouble before, nice guy, had a business. He was getting ready to plead guilty to a very, very serious felony charge. And when the judge read the facts, the judge said, what happened? And the guy's like, oh, it was just something that happened at a family birthday party, at a barbecue. Somebody's eye socket ended up getting broken in the hospital. Like, what? At a 2-year-old's birthday party? What's going on? Very often you see that in the justice system, some shattered dynamics. I mentioned I was from Philadelphia. At one point I said, I'm tired of all this crime. I want to go where there's no crime. I'm going to Lancaster County. That really happened. I was like, everybody there is named Amos or Josiah, Martha. You're wearing a bonnet. You're driving a buggy. There's no crime. There's no sin. Everybody's family is totally healthy. I kid you not, and this is serious. I believe the week we got here, someone from an Amish Mennonite background murdered their girlfriend and the family. Someone else who had been adopted murdered their family. And I was like, wow, you can't run from shattered families. They're in Lancaster, they're in Pennsylvania, they're everywhere. Very often, that's a backdrop to a lot of the evil we see in the criminal justice system. I won't talk about drugs because I think a lot of us know about that. Sometimes it has nothing to do with your parents. People make choices, and I'm going to talk next about fathers, and I just want to be very careful when I say this. Please don't take this as a bash on fathers. I love my father. I am a father. I was here for Father's Day 2 weeks ago. I've seen a lot of healthy families come in here. So when I share this, please don't take it as a knock on fathers. I know a lot of you are doing a very wonderful job, and thank you. I also know that all of us don't necessarily have the privilege of growing up with our fathers for various reasons. And I thank all the mothers and the older brothers and sisters and cousins and grandparents. So please hear that backdrop when I say this, and don't hear this as a father bash. What I will say, for those of us who have worked in the system, very, very often, some of the evil, some of that breakdown, it's the lack of fathers. And what's even scarier, lack of father doesn't just mean my father's not here physically. When I was in law school, a bunch of us, it seems strange now looking back, a lot of us sat down and had a, how are we really doing with our fathers? Somebody thought of that. Every single man in the room went around, and even those people who had their fathers present in the house were sharing how much they hated their father, what a bleep their father was. We can be fatherless even if our fathers are there physically, if they're not there emotionally or spiritually. And time again, when I would counsel people at the prison, work with clients, I worked as both a prosecutor who locked people up and as a defense attorney who defended people who got locked up. A man who was abusive to his girlfriend, he would say, well, this is what I saw my dad do growing up. And don't get me wrong, that man needed to take responsibility for what he did. He was an adult. But very often we would see those father wounds come out. A young woman who I will call Shirley, Christmas Eve a few years ago, she was an alcoholic. She went out and killed a man who was coming from church. His family was devastated. She went to prison, as she should have, and as we dug through her story, her father was a drug addict, and she was still carrying that around. Again, it doesn't excuse her behavior. She made choices to get drunk and get in that car that night. I got to the point where when I had a female client who was in jail for drugs or alcohol, I don't want to exaggerate this, but I feel very comfortable saying if she was an alcoholic, her father or her stepfather had been an alcoholic. If she was a drug addict, either her father had been a drug addict or unfortunately she was a victim of abuse. About 90, 95% of the time. So much of that we saw in the criminal justice system. The evil was from shattered families. Former Philadelphia Mayor Wilson Good said something that moved all of us. He was part of a group about mentoring people. It's called Amachi, mentoring children whose parents are in prison. And he said, he told us a story about a young man who was in state prison and for the first time met his father, who was also in state prison. And the man said, and my son is on his way into the state prison, and for the first time, dad, son, and grandfather are going to meet. Shattered families. Heartbreaking. I have a very good friend. I'm going to call him Bill. Bill and I went to school together. Bill was a good, strong, committed Christian, leader in his church, beautiful wife, 2 beautiful children. Bill had a sex addiction. And I know that's always awkward for us to talk about, but if it's okay, I'm going to talk about it today. Bill ended up getting arrested, undercover sting operation, someone pretending to be a woman of the evening. And Bill told me about that later. And I knew Bill's story, and Bill was like, when I was 11, I saw my dad's first magazine. Even outside the criminal justice system, when men get honest, and it's hard for us because, we like to keep it out here. When men get honest about our dark stuff, very, 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 very often, the pornography, the lust, the sexual addictions, the stuff that who are you going to tell? You're so embarrassed. If I tell him, he's going to think I'm not a good Christian. If I tell them, they're going to judge me. If I tell them, they're going to gossip. That's a hard place to be. But when men get honest, very often, it's, I saw my dad's computer. I saw my dad. I remember a 13-year-old kid in jail. He was selling drugs, and the kid said, I was mad because I heard my dad, and his parents, were married. I heard my dad get that cute little voice, and I knew it wasn't my mom he was talking to on the phone. Kids see that stuff. So please, again, I'm not bashing fathers, and I'm not suggesting that we don't have to take personal responsibility for our stuff. I'm just saying I've seen a huge link very often. Shattered families. Number 2, it's systems of forgetfulness. Joseph went to jail. He was innocent, by the way. We'll talk about that later. Joseph went to jail, and Joseph had a gift about interpreting dreams. And there were 2 guys in there, and Joseph interpreted their dreams. And they were like, oh, Joseph, you're the man. I promise. When I get out, I will never forget you. Well, what happened? Chief cupbearer did not remember Joseph, but forgot him. And the Bible says 2 years passed before he remembered. Oh! There's something about our criminal justice system where we end up forgetting people. Whether people have done terrible, wrong things and need to be away from society for their and our protection, that's okay. They are still people, someone's child, made in God's image. Gerald, Rebecca, John, Wendy, Rob. Those are the 5 people that got shot down at the newspaper office in Annapolis, Maryland a couple days ago. Sometimes in our systems, we get caught up in arguing. Some Americans right now, maybe some of us, are arguing about gun control. And that's okay. We have a country where we can argue those things. But while we're arguing our positions on gun control, please don't forget Gerald, Rebecca, John, Wendy, and Rob, because they're people made in God's image, and they were probably expecting to spend July 4th with their families, and they can't now. And those of us who are able, and I understand if we can't, whether it's Jared or Gerard Ramos, the shooter, he has a mother, family. It's very hard if you've been the victim of a crime, and I understand that. So if you're not there yet, that's okay, but for those of us who can, please remember that he's also a person made in God's image, and he has a mother who was shocked by what he did, or cousins, or family members, or sisters. It's very, very easy to forget the real people caught up in the system. I visited a woman named, I'll say Mary once. She forged a check or something, and she said, "Thank you so much for visiting." She said, "Because when you're in here, you get a number. You forget what it's like to be a human. You coming to visit helped me remember that I'm a person." This is a letter that I got from a young man who did something terrible, who is going to be in prison for another 20, 25 years. He wrote me, he wanted me just to visit. And this letter is dated April 30th, and I haven't visited him yet. And I brought this here today because I don't want to talk to you and not do something myself. I forgot. Oh, I'm so busy. Oh, I'm a professor. Oh, I have to go talk at a church. I'm so busy. I'm so important. He's a human being. He's someone's son. He's doing the penalty that he should do. He did something horrible. He's a person, and I forgot him. And if my wife lets me, I'm going to go see him this week. Is there anybody in here in law enforcement or who has family in law enforcement? Show of hands, show of hands. Something in the criminal justice system that is horrible. Yeah, we forget the victims sometimes, but after the headlights, after the media, after the police do the arrest and the lawyers do their speeches and the judges make their sentence, we go, they're gone. And guess what? That person who did that thing, whether it was minor or whether it was major, somebody's watching them now to keep the rest of us safe. Those who work in the prisons. In Pennsylvania, we have a lot of prisons. What is it like to be a prison guard, to walk to work every day knowing that the guy who got life in prison, what does that person have to lose now? You think they're going to be nice to you and smile? They're going to spit on you. They're going to throw stuff at you because they have nothing to lose. And frankly, in Pennsylvania, we don't do the death penalty anymore. The governor said, I'm not going to. So you could actually attack a prison guard and nothing's going to happen to you. I'm just being candid. I'm not saying it's right. We forget our prison guards, those in law enforcement who are taking care of keeping us safe. So I would just like to say to anyone in here who is in law enforcement, I'm sorry, I'm a crier, I should tell you that. Thank you for what you do. You are not forgotten. In Joseph's story, in spite of all that shattered family, Genesis chapter 39, it says the Lord was with Joseph. God had not forgotten Joseph, even in slavery, even in prison. And I would like to tell those of us in law enforcement, God remembers you. He has not forgotten you. You are special and precious and important to him. And when it sucks going to work every day and people say things about you in the media and people don't understand you and people try to tell you how to do your job and people make accusations against you and sometimes say that you're racist or say that you're mean, and you say, why am I doing this? Besides the pension and I got to take care of my kids. Please remember that God has not forgotten you the way some of us have. And can we please give a thank you, round of applause to those who take care of us. I'll just mention this briefly because I'm already taking, my goodness. Something else we forget in our system, wrongful convictions. I am not going to get into a debate. Some people think, oh, it's only 0.1%. Other people think it's as high as 10%. And I have fallen guilty of that. Oh, we get it right 95, 99% of the time. Well, I'll just make it Pennsylvania. Just in our state prisons, and I don't mean people waiting to go to prison. I'm talking about people who've been found guilty. We have about 50,000 people. So whether it's 1%, 0.1%, are we okay with 50 innocent people being in jail? Are we comfortable with that? 500? Oh, it's only 5. And I've been guilty of that. Oh, we get it right most of the time. It is not right for Joseph, who didn't do anything. It's not right for that family, people, and they're waiting and waiting. And I'm not talking about people who saying they're innocent. I'm talking about people that we found DNA that proved they're innocent. And when we say, ooh, I'm so sorry, we took 30 years of your life. That's a problem. That's an evil in our system because we forget. So as we remember victims, as we remember those who keep us safe, the police and those of prison guards, please also remember those who are suffering. Maybe some of us in this room have a family member or a friend, or maybe it's happened to us, that we got said something about us that wasn't true, like Joseph. We got convicted. That's not fun. And Joseph, we think, was in jail 15, 17 years. It wasn't a nice, easy story. Systems of forgetfulness. Can we try today to remember? And the last point, where does all this evil come from? It's our own selves, full of desire. This is Jesus talking. So Jesus isn't getting into systems now. He's not talking about sociological aspects. Oh, it's because of poverty, or it's because the Democrats did this, or the Republicans did this, or we need to have more of this. No, he says, hey, some of that bad stuff, it comes out of us. It's from here. Our evil thoughts, our immorality, our theft, our murder, adultery. He said that stuff comes from in here. And maybe we're wondering, well, what do I do with all this stuff that's in me? Can we see the next slide, please? We're actually told from the book of James how our whole sin process works. He says we're tempted when we're lured and enticed by what? Our own desire. Then our desire conceives, gives birth, and then sin, when it's fully grown, brings forth death. I'm going to date myself for a minute. Anybody here remember the movies Aliens? I know, all the young people are like, what? Okay. Alien was a movie, it started really small. Some evil thing like jumped on your face and you said, get it off, get it off. And they yanked it off and you said, ooh, thanks. And then like hours later, ooh, what's going on? What's going on? And your stomach, oh, get it out, get it out. And your stomach exploded and then this big, disgusting alien creature came out. That's what sin's like. It starts small. And then it conceives and it gives birth. This one is heartbreaking. I used to be like, ha, 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 that lawyer got caught. Friends of mine, they stole $1 million. Oh, that police officer got caught stealing money. Ooh, that prison guard got caught smuggling drugs. Ooh, that pastor got caught with his secretary. Now that I'm older and understand how this stuff works, I'm like, I feel bad because I know that started somewhere small. Again, these are people. This is a book I'm using for my ethics class. It's a true story. It's a police officer who's a Christian. He ended up fabricating a police report, sending an innocent man to jail for 3 years. And it's a wonderful reconciliation that happens at the end, and the two of them go around and vote. It was ugly for a while, and the police officer says, I didn't start that way. I just wanted to get the bad guys, and so if I just change what it started, he said, small. And he went back to his childhood. He'd be in class, and he'd say, somebody would say, does anybody have, this fancy toy? And he wanted to be cool. He'd be like, yeah, I have the toy. So he started lying because he just wanted to fit in. It started so small, and it ended up wrecking 2 lives. Where does our sin come from? It comes from our own desires. May I ask you a personal question? I don't need to see a show of hands. What's the biggest sin you're struggling with this week or even today? Is it the anger? Are you the one nobody ever wants to invite over because they're afraid you're going to explode? Or are you, like me, the guy that simmers with anger and I'm smiling, but it's boiling inside, and then like 2 years from now it comes out? No, that happened to me. I was in court. It was very embarrassing. The person on the other side was like needling, and I lost it. And I said something incredibly inappropriate, and everybody was like, oh, Churchville, he's such a nice guy. Whoa. And I was like, what? And, I had to go and apologize to everyone in the entire county. It was and I should have. It was wrong. No, I'm serious. I had to write my boss and then send an email to it was embarrassing. And I called my brother, and I said, where'd that come from? And he said, oh, you've always been angry. I was like, what? He said, yeah, when we were kids, remember, ... I had completely forgotten. That stuff was in there, started small, and it built. And my brother said, he's so gracious. He said, go watch The Avengers. I said, why? He said, because that's a secret to Bruce Banner being able to turn into Hulk whenever he wants. He's always angry. Okay, that's my brother's input. When I think about anger, though, where does anger come from? It's a desire, for me at least, it's a desire to get what I want. Oh, you hurt my feelings. I'm going to get you back. I feel disrespected. I want respect. That's where the anger comes from. It's desires. I mentioned sexual sin. It's desire. It's just desire. You want to feel good. Ooh, I want to look at that person. I just want to feel good. I want to relax. I want to escape. It's a desire to have. So Christians, we shouldn't be weird talking about sexual sin. It's in like 64 of the 66 books of the Bible. So God has no problem talking about it. I understand it's awkward, but in safe spaces, we do need to say, what's this? Is it a sexual sin that's gripping you that you're ashamed to talk to somebody about? Is it gossip? Come on, let's be honest. We love to gossip. We do. Oh, let me tell you, just for prayer, of course. And people tell me stuff. I'm like, why are they telling me? I don't know this person. I wouldn't even know them to pray for them. That is a sin that Christians, we really have to be careful. We're like, well, I'm not lusting and I'm not angry, so I just want to do something. I'm going to gossip. Why do we gossip? Because it makes us feel good. If we can talk about somebody else, we don't have to think about ourselves, and we can look down on somebody, and that feels really good. Or other people might think we're cool. Is it envy? You're just mad? Other people have stuff? That's just a desire to have what other people have. Is it greed? Is it materialism? That's a desire to have more. Well, here's the secret that we get. Before we get to the sin, it starts with desire, and our desire entices us, and then it drags us away, and then it's temptation, and then it's sin, and then it's the death of our marriage or our reputation or our career. So the good news, the great news, you guys are singing about it. You alone are my heart's desire. We take our desires and we spin them around. The great part about Joseph's story, when the boss's wife made a pass at him, he was like, ew, how could I do that and hurt God? God's given me so much. Why would I do that? So think about your sin that's kicking your butt, and then what's the desire behind the sin? If it's anger, say, what is it that I'm really trying to get that I'm going to anger? If it's lust, say, what is it that I'm looking for that I don't trust God enough that he's going to give me a better way? If it's gossip, if it's greed, whatever, I'm going to tell you another honest story. It involves my wife again, and she's an introvert, so I'm not going to point at her. I'm just kidding. I was talking to a female prisoner a few years back, and out of nowhere, she leans forward and she goes, I want to gobble you up. I did just what you did. I went, like I didn't know how to handle that. And she said, what did she say after that? She said, I'm sorry, it's so hard to listen to you. You are so handsome, something like that. And I was like, really? I didn't say that. That's what I was thinking in head. Outwardly, I said, ma'am, if you would like to discuss your case more. Here's the thing. My desire, as a kid, I always loved attention. Always wanted attention. Here I am, minding my business, trying to do my job, and out of nowhere, I'm getting attention. You know what? It felt good. A little zzz inside of me was like, that feels good. And I was like, okay. I prayed. I went home. I talked to some brothers on the way home, and then I said to my wife, hey, honey, this happened at work today. Now, I love my wife because she's so straight. She was like, that woman don't want you. I said, what? What do you mean? She said she wanted to gobble me up. My wife said, be serious. She'd been in jail for a year. You're the first man she saw. I was like, hurt. I was like, aren't I gobbleable? She said I was handsome too. The only difference between me and somebody we might read about in a story, I had competing desires. Part of me kind of liked that attention, but then I had the desire because I have a wonderful marriage and I love my kids and I love my job and I don't want to dishonor God. And I had an accountability system to help me work through the desires. If I had not had that, if my wife and I hadn't talked, we weren't such good friends, maybe that sits there and it lingers a little bit. And maybe we get in a fight. A week later, a month later, I go, you know what? I know somebody who wants to gobble me up. And that enticement comes, and maybe I make a terrible decision that wrecks my life. And you guys all hear about it, and you say, he was supposed to be a Christian. It's the same, it's just desire. So my encouragement is if that sin, that temptation that's kicking your butt, that you're just kind of discouraged, you're tired of confessing it, please don't give up. You guys sang another song about the reckless love, that Jesus comes after us. God wants so much for us to be able to overcome that. And he doesn't beat us up and keep records. He's like, no, I want to help you. I understand you came from a shattered family and a messed up system. I can help you to deal with your desires. That is wonderful news. And here I am again going over my time. So I'm going to say, what's our takeaway for today? Some of us who came from, the takeaway is at the end in Genesis 50. Can we put that up, please? God can change the story. That's the takeaway. We can have problems in the criminal justice system in shattered families, but the beauty is God can heal. In Joseph's story, it took like 20 years, but God worked through it. The best part about my day today is I'm going to go with my wife and my 2 sons and go see my dad, and then go see my sister, who I haven't really spent time with in a dozen years, honestly, because of some things that I did. But God is working to heal my own shattered family. And so God can change your story. I know we all have different family backgrounds. And systems of forgetfulness, I'm going to go visit this young man in prison. And I'm going to pray for the people who were victims of that attack, as I've already prayed. And I'm going to pray for the killer and his family, because they're all people that are precious to God. And the things in ourselves that actually come out into evil, none of us has to be discouraged and think, this is it, I'm never going to change, or no one understands, I'm so ashamed, I can't tell anybody. I'm sure Pastor Lee or other people here would be happy to talk to you, and I'm sure that they're not going to gossip, and they're going to listen, and they're going to cry, and they're going to pray with you, and they're going to say, I want to help you overcome this. God can change our story. Best thing that happened to me this summer, when I visited my brother last week, my shattered family with him, I was a bully. I was the first evil he ever knew in his own family. And he said at my wedding, in tears, he said, you were not a nice person before you became a Christian. I wasn't expecting that. It's like a wedding, right? So you're supposed to toast your brother, I'm so proud. And my brother, he was like, this guy was a jerk. And no one laughed. And he was serious. And he got tears in his eyes. And I'll never forget that. And he said, but I really see a change now. And I was with him last week, and I said, Dave, I asked him, can I tell this story? He said, yeah. I said, I just want to say again, I'm so sorry that I was a bully. You didn't deserve that. He's like the greatest brother in the world. And he said, oh, it's okay. I said, no. I know I said it before. Please forgive me. I'm so sorry. If God can help me heal the stuff in me and my own shattered family, I have full confidence, knowing that we're all in a different place and everything's not easy and quick. God can change your story too. Thank you so much for your time.